Live special show. Neil's pointing at me because it's special because I'm hosting it. Because when you subscribe to the Anfield Wrap, you get this incredible content, this incredible series of shows called, well, we call it the award-winning Transfer Gutter Show. We call it that because my name's Rob Gutmann, and it was a terrible pun on my name, wasn't it, Neil? Going back years.
And also the idea of we're all lying in the gutter and staring at the stars.
We're all lying in the gutter in the transfer filth. So this is going to be a taster for you of that dirt and filth. And we're going to do it in two parts, as we normally do TAW Live. The first part, we're going to cover the very, very exciting news that's sort of breaking, that Liverpool are closing in on Khéphren Thuram. Now, it's not the new. It all got a bit excitable on Twitter and social media last night that Thuram had agreed terms with Liverpool. Liverpool had all but agreed a fee with Nice. There's even stuff this morning about planes being tracked from Nice to Blackpool Airport. I don't know what's wrong with John Lennon Airport, by the way. Yeah. Is it because people know he is there, but in Blackpool they wouldn't have a clue?
I suspect Blackpool's not that busy.
Just not that busy.
Yeah.
That'd be why. That's what it is. But anyway, the rumour mill's hot. It's not come from the most sort of cast iron of sources, James Joyce, Paul Joyce, James Pearce. If you put them together, they're James Joyce.
Yes,
what a book they wrote once, or books. Anyway, I'm talking rubbish. Neil, let's start with you first on this one. I like to deal, before we start talking about the player, because he may be none of our business. Are you sold on this latest tsunami of rumours coming in?
So I think that the players, that player and Kone, who we're linked with, and Vega, who we've been linked with, less so Gravenberch. I feel as though, without sort of talking down the wondrousness of Jörg Schmadtke, I sort of feel as though I could negotiate personal terms with them. And the reason why is because I just don't think that this is a difficult or complex one. They're going to want to come play for Liverpool. It's obviously a massive step up. We've got a fair amount of budget, given the nature of the footballers who've left on freeze, before you even think about anything else, before you even include the idea of Mac Allister coming in. And then the other bits it is sort of dotting the I's and crossing the T's. I don't think it's that complicated. We know Liverpool, for instance, have almost got a blueprint for this, where they get these lads in. They say to them, I think, it's 90 grand a week for your first contract. If you do well after 18 months, there will be a second contract. There's loads and loads of bits of evidence of that we've done over and over again. So that's what I'd expect it is. It's something in the arena of 90 grand a week, which would be more money than either of them are currently on at Nice or Mönchengladbach or Celta Vigo by some distance. So they're getting at least probably wages. In Thuram's case, maybe doubled. In the other two cases, maybe quadrupled, or trebled. This isn't difficult to get into play for Liverpool, and Liverpool are also able to point to the track record of, if this goes well, there's more in the post. And we can even have a bit of a chat about that now as to what that'll tend to look like, but it's in the ballpark of then an increase with a mini extension at the end, because we all love you. So my point here is I don't think this is the difficult part. And the other thing that appears to have happened so far with these players, is certainly for Thuram and Kone, is that they've been predominantly just linked with Liverpool. So that also makes me think that, and that's the other thing there, which is that I think that if they're getting a move to Liverpool, I'm going to refer to Liverpool as a Champions League club, even though they're not playing in the Champions League next season. But it's a Champions League style club, and I think that Liverpool's they know they're approximately a first choice for Liverpool. They know what that can mean for their careers, for their lives, for their reputations, as all of that. So I think they're in until we decide, hypothetically, we didn't want either of them, or we decide it's been too difficult working with your club. And that's also a possibility here. So I'm not surprised by the idea, as I say, that Liverpool have agreed personal terms with any footballer in this class, really, because I just don't think it'd be that difficult for Liverpool to do.
No, we'll come on to the Kone, which are the rumours in parallel, and Vega and one or two others in part two. But just staying, Belinder, with the Thuram thing specifically, and Neil's referenced that there. When judging the authenticity of a link, I always think it's interesting when the field seems to have been narrowed down to it's the Reds or no one, because it's Thuram. If you go back a couple of weeks, we were hearing talk of PSG, who I think have all but signed Ugarte since. We had heard murmurings around United, but that felt like a lazy link because Ratcliffe, the owner of Nice and Ineos, he could be. He was the link, the bridge there to those rumours. But now it seems to be very much it's Liverpool and Thuram, Liverpool and Thuram. Those are the names that are linked day in, day out now. We know Liverpool are interested because the guys we trust, the James Joyces of this world, have said so. Are you convinced this is a real live one now for the Reds that could actually get over the line and soon?
Yeah, I think so because, like you said, the links have been there now for a few weeks. And in terms of just the profile of the player, which I use loosely because I think with a player like him, he's only 22 and he's played varying roles in the midfield three across the past 3 seasons alone. I think you should more look at his sort of attributes and just in terms of his age and the amount of football he's already played and sort of the technical level he's already playing at shows why it'd be so important for Liverpool's midfield. I mean, also like the bar is on the floor for like Liverpool's midfield requirements at the moment. Like it literally just needs to be someone who's played in midfield, is pretty good at it, but also they have a ceiling and they have more to develop at the moment. And he ticks all three of those boxes. And just I think in terms of the player himself and where maybe he can fit in at Liverpool, I think his strengths clearly seem to be strength with running with the ball and like just being able to turn over that transition, particularly like in that second half of the middle third into the final third, which we've let so many midfielders go in the summer. There's space for so many types of midfielders that we need, so he suits that. But also just like technical ability in terms of dribbling with his footwork looks really strong. And it was something like he's in the 84th percentile in the league for like XG assists. So that shows that he's even got that final third play there. But I think it can still go up many, many levels. And I think you're investing in that development as much as you're investing in what he can bring in, say, in the next 12 months.
Adam, I think there's a conversation we're destined to have for the entire summer about footballers linked to and who signed for Liverpool, which is, yeah, it sounds really good, but where does he actually play? I mean, Belinda's touched on it there, but we're talking about Mac Allister. I feel like I'm having dreams about trying to second guess where Mac Allister might play for Liverpool. When you look at the metrics on and the heat maps on someone like Kefren Thuram and others we'll discuss, it's hard to pin down exactly what type of midfielder they are. They all seem to be going, yeah, does a bit of defending, does a bit of attacking, quite box to box, really, if you think about it. It feels like we've been stuck in a sort of a loop with Jurgen and attackers for years, where Jurgen would introduce them in the press conference going, he was really cool because he could play in all the positions across the front three. And I think all the midfielders we are destined to be linked with or signed this summer, Jurgen will go, it's really cool because he can play in all the positions in the midfield. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's entirely deliberate. I don't think that's just coincidence or because the players haven't made up what they're doing or whatever. I think it's I think when you look at what happened last season in terms of the injuries and who the injuries were to and how the manager kept trying to sort of play different formations to try and get the best out of what he had, I think it was largely because a lot of the players that we had were in a defined position. And I think what we're seeing with Trent, for example, you've had you've been arguing that he is a midfielder now, whereas I think exactly, whereas most sensible people disagree. And I think there's a sort of there's a conversation to be had about, what does it matter? If they're doing what the manager is asking of them on the pitch, what does it matter where we ostensibly think they're going to play? Because within a game, if you're playing, this is really unfair because I've not watched basically any of Vincent Kompany's Burnley, so I'm going off it effectively. Why am I doing that? If you're playing Sean Dyche's Everton, where they're going to have 10 men behind the ball and that's the plan, you've got the entire pitch to play with, basically. So you don't need a player to be like, oh, well, I have to stick over here in this one particular section because that's the place I've been picked for. So I think the manager will want a group of players who can be intelligent and can be chopped and changed around the pitch depending on what it is that's taking place in front of them.
Yeah, I'm strangely excited by the tour. I'm thinking, I'll say strangely because I'd be lying if I've ever said I've ever consciously seen him play. I've YouTubed the ass off him and feel I have a sense of his stylistic approach to the game of football. But I'm excited by him because I felt, and I don't think I'm alone in that. I think we're all glad about Mac Allister, but I think we needed with our post Bellingham blues, we needed a sense of, I think, having a bit of a leader coming into our midfield. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. A presence stroke leader, and a lad who's 6'4" and who seems as commanding potentially as this young man, admittedly. I'm not saying we're looking for a messiah exactly, but I think we are looking for something, a dominator in that midfield.
Quite possibly, but I'd like him to have kicked it in the goal more, especially if we're thinking about playing him in attacking areas. If we are, and that's the key question on this, and this is back to the what's what and who's where. I'm all for the physicality, the size, the profile, the technique, the touch. And please, Belinder mentioned the through balls, the fact that he played more through balls than anyone else at Nice. But the truth of this is that his season last season at Nice was played entirely off the left-hand side, predominantly in left-hand-sided centre midfield or a defensive midfield. It's
very central though, isn't it?
I mean, it is, but it's still the left-hand side of the central part. That's where he was playing his football. It's where he's playing his trade. That's where we think Mac Allister's ending up, and it's sort of where where Jones is genuinely impressed. And the thing about Jones is he kicks it in the goal. And there's a lot of Dream 11s knocking around that people are doing where they are putting Trent into midfield and putting someone next to him. And then they're picking, say, Mac Allister, who scored a good number of goals last season, but it's worth pointing out penalties and set pieces, made up 5 of them. And if we're going to persist with this shape in this way, I think we need those 2 roles behind the front 3, especially when people are writing down the front 3 as Diaz, Gakpo and Salah. That's not a front 3 that feels to me like there's quite as many goals as we'd like, and that's maybe a Diaz conversation, which is a separate point here. But they're all going to have to play together in some way, shape, or form. And my concern is just, I think you need those 2 roles, especially given how high they are when you're in possession, how close they are to being playmaking forces and all that sort of stuff. You need to genuinely feel as though, and the opposition need to think these lads can score goals. That's been my major issue with Henderson playing the right-hand side of this shape, is being that at some point in every single game, the opposition's realised we're never going to pass to him when he's making a break and run. And also that if he does get in, he's likely to blaze it over the bar.
But peak Klopp midfields have never scored goals.
I know,
really.
but this is now different. And this is back to this is now different conversation. So if we're saying we're going back to the way in which we used to play, and then you can make really strong arguments that this suits down to the ground and so on. But then you're back to me then saying, but I don't want to ever start Diaz in a game that we need to score first in, because the Diaz output question becomes a sort of alive one in amongst all of that. I just sort of think that what I don't want us to do is I don't want to get to the end of this window and think we should have brought an attacking midfielder in. Because if you look at how everyone else is playing this shape, who's doing it, there's a really clear notion of who the attacking midfielder is every single time they step onto the pitch. And for Brighton, it has sometimes been Mac Allister. But, I think there needs to be a feeling of genuine threat from whoever it is who's playing, whoever the 2 players are who are effectively playing behind and supplementing the central striker, especially if that striker is going to be dropping in a great deal. All of this makes it sound like I'm not in favour of the player. Every clip I watch of him makes him look exciting. I also see how it could be Liverpool looking at him and thinking, after 6 months with us, he's playing number 6 because we like the fact that he can get out from under his feet. He can look after the ball. He's physically dominant. I like Kone as a link as well. All of this.
Well, Fabinho, Henderson, Wijnaldum all could play 8s and 6 roles, couldn't they?
But Wijnaldum and Henderson didn't score goals.
No,
so this is my main point here, Rob, is that the way we're playing is I think one of them at least. But one of the reasons why I love Jones in there is Jones looks like 10, 12 a season. It's no surprise. Curtis Jones' brace against Leicester is the first time a Liverpool midfielder scored a brace since Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain away at Genk in 2019. We've had a pandemic since then. The one before that is Wijnaldum against Barcelona when the hand of history was upon his shoulder. I can't even remember what the one before that was. And, but Jones has got that. I look at Jones and I feel like Jones looks like, if Jones played 38 league games, I think he'd get 12, 15 goals because that's the sort of footballer he is. I want that on the other side as well. And that's I'm saying all this like I don't think the player looks great and I want us to buy him because I do want us to buy him and I think he looks great. But either we think he's got a ceiling around what he can do in the penalty area and what he can do in front of goal and he's just got not near it yet. But to be clear, he's got 160 senior appearances and 9 goals. So we're asking him to move. And even if we allow for the fact that a lot of those early appearances will be substitutions, we're asking him to move, say, from 1 in 10 to getting closer to 1 in 4. Which is a bit of a journey, unless we're thinking about playing him at the 6.
Or there's another variation on that, unless we aren't going to persist as our default, the Trent experiment, and going back to a more traditional clock 4-3-3, where goals from midfield are a bonus rather than a necessity.
Which, if we are doing it, would have been good if loads of people had said that to Trent before he did loads of interviews.
Yeah, I know. Someone should have told us. Have we got any inserts to do before we go to the break?
Should we do an insert? We've got inserts, yeah. Do you want to do inserts?
You do some inserts for me.
Okay, excellent stuff. We are doing inserts coming up, talking about Africa OEA is me with Paul Dehaney. And then after that, as Liverpool women have moved back into Melwood, Harry Pryor spoke to Emma Sanders yesterday in that studio. I know, because I walked out and disrupted it, so hopefully they've edited that correctly, and that's got sorted out. So coming up first and foremost, there's me with Paul Dehaney on Africa OEA, and then there's Emma Sanders on Liverpool women in Melwood, and the time is 15:46.
I lost. Sorry.
And we're back. We're still live, Rob. It doesn't stop in the gap. We're still live.
Yeah.
We've got Belinder and Adam with us, being still live.
Very much alive.
Interesting little shout here from Stripe 263 in terms of throwing names in the frame. Would love Paqueta from West Ham into our midfield.
For his dancing?
I think just for his general ability. I like him. I think he's one of those who's a good shout, an interesting shout. He's done really well in his first year.
Do you know who scouted him? Mo Stewart scouted him last summer. Mo's my favourite scout because he scouted Konate when everyone else was talking about Upper Meccano. He scouted him. So if you subscribe, you get a lot of Mo Stewart and his very, very good tips. I hope he's not listening to this because he'll get a big head.
Yeah, we're not for favourite praising our friends.
No, we don't. But he did say last summer, Paqueta, somebody should be in for Paqueta. Liverpool should get Paqueta. And then those hammers, cheeky hammers, went and got Paqueta, who Neil now wants for everything, including his dancing. You got more inserts to do, or should I do more transfer chat?
It's now the rest. It's now this till the end. You can tell we've not rehearsed this.
You can tell you can tell how authentic we are here. Okay, let me go back to my messages. Jesus Christ, my agenda.
How is me, Nan?
She's doing well, Neil. Well, as much as there was Thuram breaking news last night on social media, there was an equal quantity, deluge of Manu Kone news. Now, Manu Kone, for those who haven't met him, is a box-to-box central midfielder who plays for Mönchengladbach. Like Kefren Thuram, he's 22 years old. Like Kefren Thuram, he's walking north of 6 foot. We think maybe just 6'1", maybe-ish. Like Thuram, he chalked up about 30 starts like last season. Neil will be disappointed to know he scored a one goal haul. I think he got 2 assists. He looks on his heat mappy stuff, Belinder, to be a touch more attacking than Thuram. I feel a bit of a fraud even speculating on this again because I haven't seen him play apart from enjoying his YouTubes endlessly. What's your feeling about him, his style of player, style of midfielder?
Well, so we were linked with him last summer, and I remember preparing for a gutter, looking into Manu Kone, and I think last season he played more of like the box-to-box 8 like you're talking about. But actually this year I've been reading up about sort of some of the differences between here and Thuram, and people are saying no, he's actually played more in a double pivot with like Julian Regal at Mönchengladbach this year. So I actually think he's probably been slightly more deeper, and people are saying that his best sort of attribute seems to be similarly to Thuram, ball carrying, but actually again in a different part of the pitch. So picking up the ball from the keeper or his defense, and then breaking the lines in terms of getting the team up the pitch into the attacking half. So I think he's been operating slightly more deeper this year. Maybe that could explain as well the goals or the lack of this year. But he seems really exciting in that sense, as in potentially if we're going, so like we were talking about systems earlier, and like I have somewhat of a theory that we could still go to like a 4-2-3-1 because I just don't see where Darwin Núñez fits into like any of the 4-3-3 iterations. So if you're doing a 4-2-3-1 to get the best out of Núñez, I think you can have a pivot of like Kone and Fabinho where Trent still comes in when you need him in possession, or like Mac Allister and Fabinho, or even Mac Allister in the 10 with Gakpo in the 10 and Kone behind them. So yeah, that's kind of how I can see it working. But if I'm being completely honest, I don't know, because like we're talking about all these midfielders we're linked with, they've played 8, 6, 10 in the past 3 seasons. So that's all of Mac Allister, Kone and Thuram. So that one takes intelligence from all 3 of them, but just leaves you with so many options and so many opportunities where all 3 of them can fit in potentially.
I have a theory as well about the shape, wherein at the minute we refer to it as, or the cool people are referring to it as 3-box-3. And I wonder whether or not Liverpool think that it might be 3-diamond-3.
Yeah.
Where what they might do is have essentially Fabinho sits quite cleanly, Mac Allister and Arnold are pushed a little higher of him. And this idea of when we've got the ball, we're penning teams in, recovering it quickly, moving it quickly, being able to create the play and keep the ball zipping around, especially against low blocked sides. And then someone, e.g. Gakpo, sits behind someone, e.g. Nunez. And then we play that lad who wastes our time off the left-hand side and Salah off the right. And then in there, we feel as though we might have the sort of that could give us something that we do against low blocks. That's a little bit different to the way other people are playing it, but we may feel, and then it can change and it can all, I don't think it's going to be one set thing. And that is worth pointing out with these links and these footballers. But also I think that Liverpool might also be trying to inbuild some flexibility across the next 2 or 3 years. These footballers that are being linked with, Mac Allister's 24, Thuram's 22, Kone's 21. If we're signing these, we are signing them with a bit of a commitment. So the idea that they actually can do more than one thing might be our way of future-proofing ourselves to, well, we're playing like this for 12 months, but the 12 months after might do something different. And I think the other part of this as well is that while Fabinho especially and Henderson are still around, I think there's a lot of time for people to sort of bed in. But my only other concern in terms of all of this around the bedding in thing is the manager talked about the importance of pre-season. But the truth of it is, there's a reasonable expectation. England, France, and if you want to talk about Vega, Spain, all go quite far in the Euro under-21s, which means that none of these boys will be back, including Elliott and Jones. None of these boys will be back for pre-season, as has been much touted and much planned.
Isn't it just a further week behind?
No, well, unless they choose for it not to be.
No.
The final's the 10th of July, and we're having them all back on the 8th. So it'll be at least a couple of weeks where they all go on holiday, unless their attitude and Liverpool's attitude is no holiday this year, boys. We'll let you have some time off in January, which I think it might be. I think that's a direction of travel for football, but that's a much bigger show and a different conversation. It will be disrupted pre-season if their teams go deep into the Euros.
Kone was spotted in. I think he posted something about him being in training with the French under-21s last night, which I think sort of suggests he might not be imminently doing any signing for Liverpool, so it might not be as close as we think. But I am intrigued, Adam, by the French under-21 association between Thuram and Kone. They are currently in the squad together. They've come through the French excellent system, if we can call it something, together. They're often pictured together. I think they've even pictured together this week. On Tuesday, they were pictured by the media together. It's strange. I can't quite get right in my head now if it's a bit of an either or with these two, or Klopp sees them as a wonderful partnership on and off the pitch. You know what I mean? There's a synchronicity between them that he likes. They're the same age, that he feels he might be buying something more than the sum of the parts.
I think it's probably 6 of 1, really. I think it's probably one where if he can get both, I think he'd be very happy about that, because ultimately, we have an engine room at Liverpool that picks up injuries because of the nature of the way that we play and the amount of minutes that these players get and the amount of time that they spend on the pitch. So I think if we've got two that are kind of effectively interchangeable, that would not be a bad thing, really. And I think, but at the same time, there's probably a preference. So it might well be that he's like, I definitely want Thuram. I'd quite like Kone as well, but if we can only get one of them, then I want it to be Thuram. That might be the way that he's thinking about things. And as you say, the kind of, the sound lads who are mates is no bad thing if that's what comes along, because we all know that kind of no dickheads policy and people who have a nice time and are going to ingratiate themselves with the rest of the squad is important to the manager.
Just to clarify one little thing here, someone says I hate Diaz in the comments. I don't hate Diaz. I just think he's a wide midfielder masquerading as a wide forward, and we need him to. And I hope he very much proves me wrong and shows me so much output next season. I'm shocked and stunned. But I think he wants to do all the midfielding and not enough of the forwarding. And we want to play with forwards because we want to win.
For the uninitiated, Neil prefers a big shout to a small shout. And this is where Diaz is unfortunately this week's fall guy.
I know I prefer the lad who came in and scored 7 goals between April and the end of the season.
Diaz also scored 7 goals last season between January and the end of the season, but he also started this season particularly well with his goal scoring rate until he did a
little bit better, but he wasn't quite. To me, just looked more like a midfielder than a forward.
Gets our first goal quite a lot as well when he scores.
So and Jota does that in spades.
Apart from the year he didn't. Anyway, we'll have this domestic away from you. Me and Neil will be watching Diaz, him seething, me praying throughout the season. This will be a soap opera you can continue watching. You don't even need to subscribe to do that because you can just find us in Liverpool pubs doing it. But anyway, let's move on for the roundup of Liverpool.
The last other thing, though, genuine in all of this, though,
you want the last word?
No, I'm parking that. The other thing is we're also acting as though they're only going to do 3 midfielders a little bit. And when I'm talking about an attacking midfield and all of that, it could well be that there's still more to leave.
Yes, I agree.
I think we're not sort of, and I think that Liverpool might not even know that themselves yet because they may be seeing if offers come in. But it wouldn't surprise me, for instance, if an offer came in for, hypothetically speaking, TAW, that Liverpool went, you know what, we could do that at this point. I still think it's possible that an offer might come in for Elliott, where Liverpool might think, you know what, we might do that at this point and end up with feeling as though they've got the room and the space to do one more and not just the 3.
I agree. I'd actually, just sort of in my roundup section, I'd quite like to pick the last bit of bones out of the Bellingham situation because although I think we're moving on nicely from Bellingham as a fan base, I just would be interested in your opinion, Belinder, on, we now know he's signing for Real Madrid. We now seem to have an idea that the fee is maybe not quite at the level that it was hyped that it might end up at initially. Liverpool gave the impression when they pulled out in April that it was a deal that was just becoming too costly. And they said it didn't make enough sense. Do you feel that actually what Liverpool were doing was jumping before they were pushed out by Bellingham effectively? They had got wind that Real Madrid quite reasonably had become his first choice.
Maybe, yeah, but in terms of my own opinion of how this whole Bellingham saga played out, I never ever thought it was realistic that we would sign him just because of the money involved. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's not something Liverpool have ever done, and it's like how Neil talked about at the beginning about how you bring these players in at a certain age they're at now because you can promise them in a year or 2 years, depending on how well you play, you can then get the next contract. Then in another 1 to 2 years, depending on how well you play, you get the next contract. And then they get to the age of 26, 27, 28, and they're going into their prime, and you've already got a good amount from them, but you're going to get more from them. Whereas if you're going in with Bellingham now, when the wages is probably on at Real Madrid, there's not so much room for improvement that Liverpool can realistically fit within their sort of structure of how they want to do business. So it never really made sense to me. I didn't believe in it just because of the number of, but the money's involved. But yeah, I'm sure he'll be fine at Real Madrid, and they've got so many options now. He doesn't necessarily need to be overplayed either. So yeah, I'm sure it's a good deal for them, and let them enjoy it now.
It's the wage is so high, so it's 210, 220 net. So that's post-tax before bonuses. A week.
So it's going to be north of 300.
North of 400.
Oh, but with the bonuses, yeah.
No, but I think he'd be on more than Salah.
Right.
I think the contract he's got in Madrid may well be more than Salah's on.
See, I said this at the beginning when this was touted. People go,
I'm shocked. I'm shocked. I am actually shocked. I thought I didn't think anyone would go that big at this stage, because not least because of how it inflates everything else, and you've got to worry about your own dressing room. And I take Belinda's point around, he can look after his games a little bit, but I think there's also a thing there where if you're paying someone that much money, you get them on the pitch because you put the money on the pitch. I think in the back of their minds they know that there's one more year out of Modric and Kroos, so at some point the wage budget then comes, the wage bill comes back down and all that sort of stuff. And I suspect Modric will have taken a reduced deal. So don't get me wrong, I'm not worried about Madrid's finances; they're going to be all right. But I think it's so much money, and it is more than I thought. I thought he'd go somewhere on about 200 a week, gross, and then settle there, and then do this process that we're talking about. And it feels like Madrid have just sort of gone, no, we're going to skip all the way to the end, and you can just have this one now. And I think that's what, if Liverpool have got a hint of that, it's one of them where if Liverpool wouldn't even have felt comfortable, I think, then approaching him and saying, all right, we'll put you on the midway point between Van Dijk and Salah, because then where's the next contract? Where does that anchor Trent's next contract? And I think that's how it's become too rich for Liverpool's blood, not necessarily the fee. And then also, if they feel like they're in a bit of a horse trading thing, as Chris Brack's just sort of said in the comments, they wouldn't want to have had to have the limbo of it. Will it, won't it? How long is this going to drag on for when there's other bits they want to do? It could end up being a smart move, but I am really disappointed because I think he's great, and I'm not going to act like I don't think he's great. And I think all the stuff we've talked about on this show, he does it all, and also would, quite conceivably get you 15 goals a season because he is that good.
Adam, I know when we've talked about these things in the past, you're not one who wants to jump on, let's say, blaming the ownership bandwagons for the sake of it. But looking across the club, be it the transfer committee, the manager, the ownership, are you critical of the club in its widest sense for how the Bellingham story played out from its inception, maybe even 24 months ago to the way it ended in April? Do you think they should have nipped the rumours of our interest in him in the bud, or their own interest in him in the bud, much sooner, or did they just about get it right given the circumstances?
I think they thought they could get him. Like, I think let's not dress this up as, we were never in for him or any of that sort of thing. I think they thought they could get him. I think we've been chasing him for a long time, and I think there was a sense that we could get him, and perhaps the Bellingham's camp have kind of given that impression falsely, and that's led the club on, if you like, that sort of terminology. I don't know, but I think there's just, the reason I don't like it is I think there's a desire from some to paint people associated with Liverpool as idiots, tight-fisted people that won't open the purse strings and all the rest of it. And it's just very clearly nonsense. There is not a player at the club right now, a club, by the way, that has won every trophy that they could have won with the exception of the Europa League, that wasn't bought by FSG or brought up through the ranks by FSG and given the wages that they've been given to stay there, a la Trent. So we're very clearly, the ownership isn't tight. It's just that what they do is they look to see, well, what's the most sustainable way we can do this in the long term? And I am very much in favour of a club being able to support itself in the long term without having to have the wealth of a nation to support it, right? Now, that doesn't mean that no one can be criticised. And there's no question that looking at our midfield, more should have been done. More should have been done last summer, and more should have been done in January, and that played out across the course of the season. But I can also understand why the manager and his team have looked at a team that nearly won the quadruple. They nearly completed football, to use that sort of terminology, and felt like it could go again. Right? I can understand why they had that opinion, especially this manager that puts a huge amount of faith in people all the time. So I can also understand why everybody was thinking, well, look, do we want to sign X player and not be able to bring in Bellingham? Because we've been given the impression that he sees it as, I'll go to Liverpool for 3 or 4 years and then move on to Real Madrid. That will have been the impression they've been given by Bellingham in his camp. I just don't see why they would have done it like this any other way. And the idea of, they just wanted to save money just doesn't wash for me, I don't think.
I think there's a massive thing where people, and I think I don't think it's just an online thing, but I think there's almost some sort of notion that, and this is back to how you view your own identity and sense of self. I want to be really clear. Rob Gutmann, Belinder, Bhati, and Adam Smith, and you, listener, have not lost any face in this. When everyone is trying to do the, oh my God, aren't you embarrassed? X is washed. Y is cooking. All this nonsense. The best thing to be is to be a grown up about it and say, I just want my football team to win.
Yeah.
And I think that and by the way, there were bits like I literally walked out of Brighton when Liverpool were getting hammered 3-0, feeling a little bit embarrassed as to how awful the football team I was watching were that day. And I'm all right with that. That's a level of embarrassment I can deal with because I paid the tickets and I've bought my tickets and I've taken my choice and I've put up with that. And I'm in a ground and Liverpool are dreadful and Brighton are brilliant and it's killing me and I'm not enjoying it. But I think worrying about, if you're not careful, you end up sort of talking yourself into a situation that you should never try to go and get anyone really good in, because if you don't get them in at some point, some bellend who supports Manchester United might point and laugh in a context where Manchester United, for instance, wanted to buy Cody Gakpo in December and he went to Liverpool instead. All this stuff, I think it's, I think we've got to get beyond it and remember that genuinely the stuff that matters is what matters on the football pitch, but to do that, you've got to recruit well. Obviously you have. But I think we're just not linked to this. That's a really crucial point. Like, genuinely, you've got other things going on in your life beyond this, which is much more important to your identity. And I think that's what people get all wrapped up in. Simultaneously, there's literally very few things in my life more important to me that Liverpool win every single time that they play football. So it's a balancing act between the two things. But I think I'd rather Liverpool try to get Bellingham, failed, I think got blown out the water by Madrid's wage offer, decided they didn't want to know, and just decided they didn't want to know, which may be the right thing or the wrong thing. But I think that's what they decided. We're just not even going to engage. If I suspect there might have been a phone call from Bellingham's people to Liverpool saying they're offering us this much, and Liverpool went, "All right, boys, good luck. Hope it goes really well for you." Because it's so much money, and I think that's where that sort of gets wrapped up. I think there's loads of other stuff around the ownership and whether or not you want to win, and what Manchester City are, and where Newcastle is, and what football's like at the minute. And we've talked about that.
Let's not get way existential. Yeah. Now, I mean, I think transfers are really, really important. I think might be the most important thing going. And I know, but I concur with Neil. I think you have to ask yourself a lot of questions before you just start playing blame games with people. But I do think, Belinder, it is clear that Liverpool haven't adopted perhaps the same canny approach to acquisitions as they employed in the first phase of Klopp's reign, the period, let's call it, from 16 to 19, whereby we acquired the majority of the squad that went on to do so very well and win cups and leagues, etc., etc. So they didn't reinvest in the midfield in particular at the right pace, or kept waiting for Mr. Right far too long. They waited for Tchouaméni, didn't come. They've waited argued for Bellingham for 2 years, he hasn't come. So they have got it wrong. But no bad faith intended, but they've got it wrong. But let's look at I only want to face forwards, really. Do you think, though, bearing it in mind,
you barely clapped Firmino off?
Yeah, exactly.
He was finished for you as far as
King is dead. Long live the king.
Yeah.
Well, fuck the past. Only about the future. I'm only interested in Liverpool's next title win, but I am interested in learning lessons from the past. And I do wonder whether, just to reference a theme we talked about earlier, if they think there might be an opportunity here to sort of, I don't want to use the word, we've used this on other shows, to overbloat the squad, but to try a bit of a blunderbuss approach, maybe bring in 4 young, interesting midfielders with a view to 2 turning out to be sensational first season, 1 being a project, and 1 being a guy you end up letting go after a year or 18 months. I mean, I wonder, I'd do that, but I'm stupid. Well, no, I'm not. But you know what I mean? I'm childish about the need for transfers. What's your thoughts in all seriousness?
Well, first of all, I would hope that we would have learned from the lessons and not let those players that we bring in potentially just run their contracts down for the next however many years, like we did with Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain, because we did not get the value out of them on the pitch, and we did not get the value out of them off the pitch either.
Keita's going to Werder Bremen, by the way.
That's nice.
Just been confirmed.
He's going there. He may not play there ever, but he is definitely. It looks like he's going there.
So yeah, I'd hope we'd learn that lesson first of all. But it's like you say, it's for the potential wages they'd be on and potential transfer fees. It's low risk, but potentially slow burning, high reward for the next few years. So in that sense, yes. And then I had another point, actually.
More 35 million, lads.
Rob's argument, Belinder, I think, is a good argument in the context of a season in the Europa League, because it's very easy to imagine how some of these players get a number of games before we hit Christmas, which is often not the case where you go, well, I just don't know where he's going to play. Carvalho last season being an example. Mm-hmm. If we were in the Europa League, Carvalho, I think, would have got 6 starts.
Yeah.
But as it is, and so that's why I think I think Rob's argument's good in that context, Belinder.
Yeah, and like we were saying as well, there's just so much uncertainty about these players that we're linked to, just in terms of where they fit in. So like Kone's played in a Gladbach team for 2 years. So you don't even know what his ceiling actually is, which I'm trying to frame as a good thing, because that's the value that's where, because he's got room to develop there, and that's what you invest in. So yeah.
Okay, Neil, is there any more administration we have to do?
People, if they want more of this sort of thing, with maybe less of me and you sniping at each other, they
pay double for the sniping.
Would they pay double for the sniping? Let us know in the comments if you pay double for the sniping. Can subscribe to the Anfield Wrap. They can support the Anfield Wrap in a number of ways through subscriptions. There's YouTube on this as well. If you want to get onto the YouTube, and everything that we do that goes onto there, that goes behind a paywall. And there is obviously also downloading the app and subscribing there, and you can subscribe through the website, and all of it helps support the Anfield Wrap and all the fabulous work we do. We've done loads of shows this week for free. Harriet's we haven't even talked about the wondrousness that is Gabby Veiga. Harriet's just chatted about Gabby Veiga Is it Gabri?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we'll all call him Gabby in the end in a Liverpool way.
The Gabster.
If he comes in. So she just talked to Alexander Johnson about that. That is coming out in the next few minutes. All over all the reaction stuff, all over all the insight into all the players, everything that you need. People should just be supporting the Anfield Wrap. Do you agree?
I 100% agree, Neil.
Do you think this was a good
thing
show?
we've agreed on today?
Have you, the only thing we've agreed on? Do you think this has gone well?
I feel it's gone well.
Should we do it again next week?
Let's do it again next week.
Should we say thank you to them?
Thank you, listeners, for bearing with us. And thank you, Belinder. And thank you, Adam. And thank you, Neil. I'll give you a kiss when we're off camera.